So today we're going to dive into a title that I read from one of my contemporaries around why men would leave a woman when she helps him get back on his feet. And this is a subject I'm actually it's kind of near and dear to my heart, primarily because, and let me ask if this resonates with any of you, not necessarily from from personal experience. And that is, I know for me personally, after going through a divorce, turning 40, going through a divorce about a decade and a half ago, I found myself out in the dating marketplace. Now, at this very same time, I lost my $250,000 a year job. The market crash of 2008 was beginning. I was an emotional train wreck. I was an emotional train wreck. It was very challenging me for well over half a decade. And quite frankly, took even much longer to heal. And yet during that time, I was craving companionship. I was craving connection. I was craving sex. But I was in no way able to commit during that period of my life because I was such a train wreck. And what was interesting to me was I kept saying the words, I want a relationship, I want a relationship, I want a relationship. And what I mean to say is, I wanted those things I said. I wanted companionship, connection, and sex. And I knew that could only come to me in the guise of a relationship. And so in the early stages of dating, I would intimate that I wanted a relationship. Now, what was interesting also is during that period of time, the minute I got close to someone, I would pull away. My fear would pop up, my reluctance of pursuing someone much past this short-lived experience, and I found myself pulling away. And I'm going to be candid with you. I didn't do this with any malicious intent. I didn't do this from a place of wanting to hurt someone. In fact, quite the opposite. I didn't continue. Well, I have to really look back. Now I'm going to pause for a second, really look back, because there was a pattern going on here where I would, kind of come on strong in the beginning because I was, again, desiring companionship, connection, and sex. And yet, in some cases, there would be a short-lived relationship only to end it saying, I'm not ready for a relationship. And I'd be back out on the dating apps right away. Has this ever happened to you? You've been with a man who implied he wanted a relationship. His life was a mess. He ended the relationship. And then you could see he was on the dating apps literally the next day. That's what happened to me. And this went on for years. And again, I didn't do this intentionally. I didn't do this maliciously. I didn't do this with the intent of hurting someone. I was rather clueless to my own emotional health during this period of time. And for about the next 5 years, I was in limbo. I was floundering. And why I'm sharing this is what a lot of men go through, a lot of women as well. After you've gone through a divorce, maybe you've had a contentious divorce, maybe you've had job issues, like in my case. For some people, it's health issues. Sometimes it's issues with your children. Sometimes it's issues with elderly parents. Whatever the crisis that knocks you off your feet. And if you follow my channel for a while, I talk about the importance for a man to have the ground underneath him very solid for him to actually lean into a healthy, happy relationship. It's one of the reasons why I created my private coaching program. By the way, there's a link right here to schedule a free discovery call with me to see if working with the coach is right for you. And there's a link below as well. As a coach, I actually help you figure out which men, based on a series of questions, and additionally based on your personality, to determine if he's really relationship ready. And so in a few minutes, I'm going to go through some of the reasons why a man would leave a woman who helps him get back on his feet. Because in my case, I didn't leave the person I was with. And I'm going to share a personal story here. I did eventually, about 5 years after my ex-wife and I separated, I met a woman who ended up practically reparenting me. Now, thankfully, she was in a position where she accepted that I was I was in the bottom of the pit when I met her, and she accepted me. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And thankfully, she never got dependent upon me. She didn't give her power away to me in our relationship. At the same time, this person helped reparent me. And what I mean by reparent is when a man is off his feet, he doesn't feel safe. He doesn't feel like he's even capable of taking care of himself. And thankfully, there are, in some cases, it's a blessing and a curse, but thankfully, there are so many beautiful women who would support men, not financially support, but emotionally support men when they're not on their feet. And it's a beautiful aspect of a woman's, in many cases, not all women, but many women's nature, okay? To actually be loving and supporting, partially because you see the good in men. And men do this as well. This isn't singular to just women. And sometimes enable women who aren't good for them. But we're going to give you some signs to look for. Well, I just shared with you some of the signs to look for. Is he going through a contentious divorce? Does he have issues going on in his professional life? Does he have issues with his children? Does he have issues with elderly parents? Maybe he has issues with health. When I say issues, they're consuming him in his life that makes it difficult, as I said before, to have the ground underneath him solid. And in these particular cases, it's important to spot these men sooner rather than later before you invest in someone. Now, I know it's even harder sometimes to differentiate between the men who do say relationship talk, like I did, and the men who love bomb and are approaching you from a very demonstrative and effusive place, only have these men be emotionally inept, emotionally immature, maybe even emotionally constipated. In fact, that's a big percentage of the population. We're dealing with a population, for those of us in midlife, and I always say midlife is after baby making years and before retirement. We're dealing with a population that's rather either has clinical issues or is rather dysfunctional in their emotional maturity and their relationship skills. Look, I'm your big brother. I wish I could be there for you on a first date or while you're dating. I'd have the shotgun out, point at the guy's head and saying, "What's your intentions with my sister?" What that is it's a vetting process. And we have to learn this vetting process sooner rather than later before we give our heart to a person who may leave us the minute we get back on our feet. So I want to share with you some notes I created for this segment. And I just want to say this. Most men, you really have to evaluate, is a person struggling in their life from a situational position, or is it a habitual one? Is it situational or habitual one? For example, sometimes you could just have a bad day at work. That's just situational. But if you're actually going through crisis in your professional life, that's habitual. And what I mean to say, the emotional effects of that is going to be ongoing. So it's important to differentiate between the situational versus what I say is habitual or continual emotional crisis going on in his life. Here's the thing. When a man gets, so now let's just say you've been in this relationship with someone, you've held out, he's gotten back on his feet, whether his divorce is finalized, whether issues with his children has been resolved, maybe parental issues changed, maybe his professional life has changed. Okay, I just want to kind of lay the foundation. He's back on his feet. The ground underneath him's been solid, and you've been in a relationship with him for 3 months, 6 months, a year, a couple years. Some of the reasons why they leave is, and it's not because you're a bad person. Let me just clarify that. This has nothing to do with you being a bad person, but he might be bored because the two of you have grown apart because he's been dealing with all this crisis. What got you two together has actually caused you to drift apart. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is the sex was off. Again, if the ground underneath the person isn't solid, it can actually cause them to be less intimate during their during the sex. But it also could be the sex was off in the beginning. and then he's now like on his feet because he's been dependent upon you. He's like, I want to go be with someone else I can have better sex with. Here's one of the worst things that can happen. I want to lean into this for a while, is he views you as his mom. He views you as his mom. In a way, when you're being this generous caretaker to this man, when you're being this loving caretaker to this man, it actually can come across as mother energy. I know in my particular case, when I shared with you the relationship I was in, it actually turned into that kind of dynamic. And interesting enough, there was an age difference between us. She was 10 years older. So in a way, I wonder if my childhood wounds and traumas attracted me to her. If you're not familiar with the work of Imago by Harvell Hendricks and Helen Hunt, I'll spell that for you. Imago, Imago, Imgao. Someone post that in the chat box and write down Harvell Hendricks and Helen Hunt. If you're not familiar with their work, it talks about how we oftentimes choose relationships from a familiarity perspective, traditionally from one or both of our parents. And in my particular case, I think this person had mother energy. It's why I gravitated towards her. I'm grateful for her because she did on some level reparent me. And by the way, she and I are very good friends. And I only mention this in the sense we're good friends, where we've turned into family with one another and there's no regrets. We had a very conscious uncoupling. My sweetheart and I, there she is right there, Marie, we've socialized with my ex-girlfriend and she has an amazing partner in her life. Because I think in some ways I helped reparent her, but that's for another conversation. But there was mother energy going on. And so if you find yourself in that caretaking role, it can actually twist in a man's emotional psyche as what I call mother energy, or he views you as his mom. And again, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just being your loving self. And yet at the same time, you have to be mindful of really choosing partners who are capable of leaning into a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship. Why you have to ask better questions in the early stages so you don't find yourself in these kind of situations. Okay, number 4. There was no real emotional intimacy. This relationship was built on the foundation of you being the caretaker for him. And there wasn't any real emotional intimacy built in the relationship. Here's one. There's a lack of intellectual stimulation. Sometimes being a caretaker, and by the way, there's some beautiful women who are nurturers out there, which I think is very loving. But in some cases, they haven't developed their intellectual side. They've been such good caretakers and nurturers. And some men do crave that intellectual stimulation. The other thing that happens when a man is back on his feet, and why he might leave, is now the relationship is too much responsibility for him, whether it's a physical responsibility or an emotional responsibility. It's just too much responsibility for him. I know when I shared with you earlier, when I was in the early stage of dating and I did these 6-week, 12-week relationships, is because I was in a not a good place. And in the beginning, it's kind of fun. Dating, can be fun. It's exciting. But the minute it reached a point of having intimacy, to having sex, all of a sudden there was emotional responsibility as well as financial responsibility. And I'd hit my brick wall because I'm like, that's as far as I can go. And again, it's easier for me to look back connecting these dots. At the time, I wasn't necessarily aware of it, of what was actually going on inside of me. And again, most men are good guys. They're not doing this intentionally, even if we are conscious, aware of what's going on. Folks, human emotions is incredibly complex. And I was just starting to experience my emotions probably for the first time in my life. And I was in absolute emotional chaos. That's why I was so emotionally constipated during that period of my life. And it took a lot of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. By the way, kind of relates to my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work. By the way, there's a link in the description below to get a copy of all the books I recommend in my videos. This is, by doing the work over a decade or 2 decades, quite frankly, Well, not quite 2 decades, but a decade and a half prepared me for where I am at today. Too much responsibility. I wasn't capable, and this happens for a lot of men as well. The other thing happens is we're in a world today where there's just so much choice, so many opportunities that we operate from this place of fear of missing out. You're in this relationship and it's not quite right. And you're thinking, I got to be in another relationship. I got to be in another relationship because there's a better one out there. There's a better one out there. There was a movie I saw growing up called Hard Bodies, and they called it The Bigger, Better Deal. The Bigger, Better Deal. In other words, there's going to be someone better out there. There's going to be someone better out there. I think this happens for a lot of men and women when they don't genuinely appreciate the person they're with. They don't appreciate them. And I say this now from a real heart-centered place, because I can say honestly, truly, for the first time in my life, I'm in what I feel like is the most healthiest, happiest relationship I've ever been in. And I believe it's partially due to, not just because she's this, attractive woman, or, we get along so well. It's for the first time in my life, I actually appreciate someone. I am in such gratitude. This is a person, we're both going through our own stuff in our lives, and yet I want to be there for her. And I know she wants to be there for me, and I'm grateful for that. And because of that gratitude, I can't ever imagine wanting anything, because you reach a point, some men reach a point in midlife where it's no longer about trying to get the bigger, better deal. It's about experiencing life with someone that you want to go through the nooks and crannies of the tough times as well as the good times. And it's okay, because that's where the richness of a relationship occurs. Anyway, that's just a side note on my personal relationship. And last but not least, I said this before, the minute a man gets on his feet, he was with a woman who saw him at his worst. And now he's on his feet. The ground underneath him feels solid, and he wants to be a bright, shiny penny to someone new. I can appreciate how that might feel to a man. I'm not sure I experienced it per se, but I can certainly appreciate how, when someone else has seen us at our worst, when someone has seen us at our weakest moment, we don't want to be reminded of that in our lives. And by ending a relationship, leaving that person is a frequent occurrence. So what can we learn from all this? Ladies, in the early stage of dating, I'm again highly focused on helping you really vet if the two of you are genuinely compatible with one another. Do you really know how to vet for emotional maturity, vet for alignment? That's what I work on with women. Thankfully, I have clients calling me all the time. Jonathan, I met a great guy. Jonathan, I met a great guy. Jonathan, I met a great guy. And they know the difference. And that's what I'd like to help you as well. So if you need some support on that, check out the links below to a discovery call, to my group, follow me on Instagram, all that good stuff, and check out the books I recommend. All right. Well, this is a morning video. We're dressed a little casual. I think this is an opportunity to just begin with our Q&A. If you're not familiar with my Q, oh, by the way, really quickly, let me backtrack for a second. If you found value in this, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel, okay? Please tell your friends. And again, check out all the links below. All right, this will be a great place to start our Q&A. If you're not familiar with the Q&A portion, you simply write a question in the chat box, or if you're watching a replay, post a comment. Or if you'd like, hit the $sign to donate to my, well, first off, I want to backtrack. If you'd like to support my work, please purchase a super sticker, super chat. All the monies go to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there. That's my son who passed away a few years ago. And in his honor, I've donated to causes like the Hoffman Process or Insight Institute, just to name a few. Hit that little $sign. If you're watching the replay, hit a super thanks as well. All right, I think it's time to take questions. And I see there's a couple in here. One from Pamela. Hey, sweetheart, how you doing? Question. You said that when you want to take care of someone, the relationship is real. How do you differentiate between that being a caretaker as you described? Oh, I love this question. So, one of the fundamentals of commitment and trust is actually leaning into the idea that I would like to take care of this person. Now, for a man, it's oftentimes that provider protector leaning into the financially supporting one another. But what it means is that taking care of someone, and both people wanting to take care of one another, is the wedding vows for richer, for poor, sickness and health. You know, being there beyond the good times. In other words, I'm there for you even when it's tough. That's what taking care of means. And taking care of means I'm going to support you in your professional endeavors. So it's everything we just described in the woman helping a man get back on his feet. But when a man's life, remember, when the ground underneath a man isn't solid, he's not in a capacity to take care of someone. So what happens is women take on the role of caretaker, but with a person that you're not really sure he's capable of doing the same for yourself. And in many cases, you're projecting that once he gets back on his feet, he'll do the same for you. I think relationships that start from an imbalanced perspective can set one up for failure. Now, in some cases, there's certainly men and women that when they've been caretaked, that they actually are lean into a place of gratitude. I know a man who is a very successful eye doctor. He was in a relationship with a financial investment. She was in the investment world. They'd been together for a couple of years, and he contracted like the West Nile bug or whatever that was called some years ago, and he literally virtually almost died. And their relationship was rather casual prior to this. But in this situation, he was literally about to die. And in that moment, she was absolutely there to support him 110%. And through his appreciation of this person, they went on to get married. Okay. That's the situational situation. You know, it was something where they're together. This wasn't getting back on his feet because he started from a weak foundation. He started from a strong foundation, but she was there. It was situational. Again, if someone's foundation is weak, this is true for women as well. It makes it difficult to actually know, are you with this person out of a dependency, or are you with this person through love? So, Pamela, I hope I answered your question. It is difficult to differentiate. Again, better to vet the person to determine, are they in a good place in their life, would be my invitation for you. Thank you again for that question. I really appreciate it. All right, let's see what else we have on the board. Sylvia, sounds like your ex-girlfriend was a fixer. I don't really see it that way. I don't think she took me on as a project. I think there was some really good things between the two of us. But I also feel like we were both, you know, here's the thing. Many relationship gurus will tell you, like Barbara DeAngelis. If you're not familiar with the work of Barbara DeAngelis, I highly recommend checking her out. How to Make Love All the Time. But she will tell you that two people will come together for a mutual healing of one another. I believe in that case, Sylvia, there was a mutual healing going on, so we could actually be in a space where we could lean into a relationship in the future. So we were there for each other. I think I was there to heal some of her father wounds, and she was there to help me heal my, be a loving support person. And again, I think that's why we were able to do a very conscious uncoupling when our relationship ended. Okay, so thank you so much. By the way, Leaf wrote the book I mentioned earlier, Harville Hendrix, Helen Hunt, Getting the Love You Want. Yes, that's the book. Here. Getting the Love You Want. By the way, there's a link below to get a copy of this book for understanding the imago. So thanks for posting that. I really appreciate it. All right, let's see what other questions. Linda says, great insight and transparency. Always enjoy your podcast. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Let's go swimming. Let's go. Flower writes, question, Flowers writes, when a man tells me his work income, is he expecting me to tell him my work income? That's a good question. I think it's important to understand that financial stability for a relationship is an important facet of being in a fully committed relationship. I know in the case of my sweetheart and I, and if you know our backstory, we were a long distance relationship. I met her while I was traveling to Chicago to perform a wedding, and she joined me at the wedding. And we had been speaking a year earlier on and off for about a year before we physically met. And we met through Match.com. Actually, Match.com and Millionaire Match, I should say. It was both those sites. She believes we actually communicated earlier than when I believe we communicated. So when we talked about, there was this 1,800-mile distance, one of the things we did on her visit when she came to visit Los Angeles and eventually visit me, she was visiting her children for her birthday. We laid our cards on the table, which included our income. We laid it on the table where we stand financially because we both recognize that to sustain a healthy, happy relationship, the ground underneath you needs to feel rather solid. So I think it's important to have those discussions sooner rather than later. I don't think you have to do it on a first, second, or third date. But if someone does that, these are important conversations to have. But Jonathan, I'm just supposed to sit back in my feminine energy and I'm supposed to blah, blah, blah. I'm just being rhetorical here. Folks, if you want to be real, it's okay to be real. And if you're fearful of sharing your income with someone, certainly if they've done it first, now it could be that there's some nefarious thing going on. He doesn't actually make that income. He doesn't really support himself that way. And he's trying to view, a sugar mama. But I think for the most part, these are conversations that need to be had sooner rather than later. So that's just my perception on that one. I hope that helps. Leaf, thank you so much for that question. Oops, sorry. Wrong. Where did that? Flowers wrote that. Thank you so much, Flowers, for that. Okay. Question. In our 60s, if we go into a relationship, shouldn't we expect caretaking of the other side eventually? Well, yeah. I'm so happy that you posted that question. Look at folks, when you get into your 60s, caretaking is part of the equation. So this is why it's important to have some level of the ground underneath you solid, because that is a big part of choosing a partner in your life. The days in front of us are going to be much harder, shorter than the days behind us. And with those days in front of us is going to come a deterioration of our bodies. So being there for another person is a rather, again, coming back to wedding vows. So, I'm a proponent that people have to really get intentional and radically honest with each other sooner rather than later, because it sucks being in your early 60s investing in someone only to have them disappear. So having these radically honest conversations, look, it takes about, I was listening to Jay Shetty. He says it takes about 40 hours of face-to-face time just to get to know someone at a base level. I say it takes about 100 hours of face-to-face time to build the first layer of trust. And it takes about 200 hours of face-to-face time to build a good friendship. If two people are physically attracted to one another, then if they're genuinely physically attracted, then have those radical honesty conversations to determine, do you share the same values? Are your lifestyles blendable? And is this person an emotional grown-up? But our current dating strategy is just a very long, drawn-out friends with benefits without any real meat in the relationship, particularly in the notion that we have to, we're choosing someone to maybe be there for us during, think of the wedding vows, sickness and health, rich or poor. It's choosing someone that could be there for you. You know, I look at my sweetheart and she's got some, minor physical ailments. And I can't imagine being with anyone else. I mean, even if she got radically sick, I wouldn't want to go anywhere else but be by her side. I feel that strongly. A lot of men aren't in that capacity to be there because the life underneath them doesn't feel solid. And so caretaking is part of the equation. Let's hope we get a good 10 or 20 years, with each other before we have to deal with it. But at the same time, something can happen in a moment's notice. And you have to be there in your heart saying, commitment is really saying, I'm going to be there for you through the tough times. That's what commitment is. It's not merely monogamy. It's not merely exclusivity. It's I'm going to be there for you because your best interests are my best interest. I am looking out for your best interest, even if you're going through a tough time. It's interesting. My girlfriend and I have been watching the show, The Good Doctor. And these are situations where a lot of husbands and wives are dealing with major crisis. And what I appreciate about the show, both the men and women alike are sticking by their partners. I mean, this is a TV show, but there are a lot of good people out there that would be in your corner if you're going through a tough time. I want you to really know that there are a lot of good people that would be there for you during the tough times. All right. Thank you so much for that question. Leaf says, question, since you no longer have balcony, should I delete my 10 a.m. Eastern morning reminders that keep Saturday office ones instead? Thank you so much. I still record a Sunday morning video that comes out every 7 a.m. Pacific Coast time. I'm doing some live streams on, and by the way, those Sunday videos were always pre-recorded. I'm doing some live streams on Saturday just because I want to have a little bit of fun before I get going with my sweetheart today. So, you know what? I'm usually producing content 5 to 6 to 7 times a week. So you always keep your channel open. Thank you so much. Here's a question. What's up with these unhappy married men? How do I attract a husband material, but I attract one husband after another? It beats everything I've seen. I find it interesting that every single man that asks you out on a date is married. I just don't believe that's the case. I mean, while maybe 10 or 20% of the people on the dating apps are married, 80% are not. So either you have an attraction to married men or you're not accepting dates from single men. Okay, you don't know that they're single. Well, then ask right away, does anyone believe that they're currently in a relationship with you? Does anyone believe they're currently in a relationship with you? Get that question asked out of the way. And by the way, I'm not opposed to doing background checks. My sweetheart used to do that. She wasn't, go on Google, do a little bit of research to see where this person's at in their life. When we're meeting total strangers, but listen, folks, before you become physically intimate with someone, you have every right to ask the hardest questions you want. Married men, I should do a video on how married men, unless they're traveling, you can see patterns. They don't talk to you from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or maybe they shoot text message in between, but they don't actually physically talk to you. They're always constantly busy as they're raising their children or they're with their wife. So there are some signs. And by the way, I'll shoot a video on how to spot a married guy. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Linda writes, what are your thoughts about women in relationship with a man who makes less income? Is it a positive flag when a man is engaged in doing things that he feels? I'm always the belief that 2 incomes are better than 1. Or 2 net worths are better than 1. So if a woman makes $150,000 a year and she's with a guy that makes 95, well, that's $245,000 combined. Now it depends. If the man is insecure or doesn't feel that he is a provider, that could cause a provider, because you don't have to be a provider from a financial perspective. You can be a provider from an emotional perspective. If the two of you haven't had real good, honest dialogue, and if you're not a woman who is a control freak, a lot of women who make more money can be absolutely controlling of men. I've seen this before. I've witnessed this in relationships. So if she's not controlling and he's not insecure about it, it doesn't matter the income differential, because in my mind, two incomes are better than one. So thank you so much for that. Bump. Let's see. I don't recall your question. So can you write your question down again? Thank you so much. Maria says you're an early bird today. Yeah, I am a little bit of an early bird today. Let's see. Wanda writes a question. Should you ever check up on an ex-friend after over a year to see if they're doing better in their health or life in general to make amends? You know, that's an individual choice. I'm a big proponent of sometimes let sleeping dogs lie. It depends on how the for lack of a word, the breakup occurred. If it was contentious, you know, some people feel the need to make amends, and you know, I am certainly supportive of that. But at the same time, sometimes the experience that the two of you had was meant to be a short-lived experience, and unless you're doing it from a selfish perspective or a needy perspective, I don't think you have to open that door up. I know I've had a few relationships that have happened since my divorce, and I'm friendly with a few people. Actually, probably 2 or 3 for the most part. Friendly with them, not friends with them, but friendly. And then I have one that I consider family, not friends. So, but for the most part, there's a lot of women I dated that didn't go anywhere, and I have no interest in reaching out to them. And, you know, even if they reached out to me, I would be polite and kind, but, you know, unless they're going to be an active participant in your life, ask yourself, are they going to be an active participant in your life? Ask yourself, am I doing it from a needy place or am I doing it from a sincere place? That's my rough thoughts on that, Wanda. So thank you so much. Terry says, this has been my favorite session ever. Well, thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate that. All right, let's keep swimming. If you have a question, write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Here we go. Patricia writes, question. How do you deal with a man who says he doesn't want anything serious, but always comes back to you for conversation and someone he can trust with his feelings? Listen, folks, ask yourself a question. First off, ask this question. Do you want a fully committed relationship? Do you want partnership with someone? If the answer is yes, and someone doesn't want that, then walk away and discontinue conversation. He wants your feminine energy. He wants something from you, but he's not willing to give you what you want. So why do you want to engage with someone? I know it feels good to be wanted. Feels good to be wanted, especially when at the moment someone else isn't wanting you. Then put yourself out there to be seen by single eligible men. Make the effort to be seen so you get asked out, so some new man who truly wants a relationship wants you. I don't mean to be crass here, but in this particular case, you're allowing this to happen because for some people, it's better to get some attention than no attention at all. Folks, I invite you to be really careful. Some attention better than no attention at all is usually a recipe for disaster. So I'd be careful on that, Patricia. But thank you so much for your question. Question from Happy Ann. After having sex, he only wants to hang out at home. Is that okay, or does he see me in a different light? You know, I can speak from personal experience. There have been times in my life that my only capacity, and this is, you know, shortly after my divorce, my only capacity was to give physical attention. In other words, I didn't want someone outside because that felt like too much responsibility for implying that there would be something more than just this friends with benefits. Now, again, remember I said earlier, dating just seems to be a series of friends with benefits. In some cases, men, the minute they take you out to dinner or that you physically going out in the world, seeing family and friends, that sort of thing, it implies something greater than just a sexual relationship. If that is not what you want, if you want a relationship where you grow together, let me repeat that. You want a relationship, you grow together, then it's incumbent to do social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork, building skills, both in your personal and your professional life, intimacy, both physical and emotional intimacy that leads to either moving in together or getting married. That's my rhetoric. Okay, folks? If he's not taking you out in the world, then you're just a glorified booty call. But Jonathan, I love him. Folks, love is a lot more than, if you're not, oftentimes many of you are experiencing attachment and not love. If you're not familiar with the work of Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, by the way, all the books I recommend are listed below. Read the book Attached. Are you anxious, avoidant, secure? How the science of adult attachment can help you find and keep real love. A lot of times, many of you are experiencing what you think is love, but it's just attachment to another human being. So if he's not serious, then cut him out of your life. It's not worth the engagement, and you'll feel better for it in the long run. By the way, if anyone agrees with me with what I just shared with Patricia, please post a comment below. All right, Happy Ann wrote. Oh, that I'm sorry. What Happy Ann wrote. Okay. CC says, yes, please do a video on how to spot married men. Okay, I'll definitely do that one. Okay. Mimi writes, question. Date a guy I really feel a strong connection, and I felt he did too. Now, after 3 dates, he's unsure of the connection and wanted to continue being friends. I accepted that, but what should I do? I hope you didn't sleep with him, because then so what he's done is put you in the friend zone. Okay. He's fearful of making any more emotional commitment. He's reluctant to make any more commitment to this relationship. And yet he appreciates your feminine energy. And what I mean by feminine energy, you're a female, and he appreciates your company. Because he wants female company, because female company is oftentimes much kinder than male company. Men can be jackasses to one another, and we don't want to necessarily share our feelings to men. So he could potentially view you as what I call his pseudo therapist. He will dump his emotional life in your lap, and you're going to be that emotional caretaker, thinking you by supporting him, he'll find a way to love you. Look at what can you do? Just say, I'm okay with being friends. You could see where it goes. Don't kiss him. Don't get physically sexual with him, which you most likely will. And then you'll be attached to a guy who's going to dump you later, most likely. And make sure you're actively dating other people. If you want to be friends with them, though, ask yourself, why do you want to be? Okay, think of it this way. And this is a really good one for all of you to. You go, well, I'd like to be his friend. When you meet the love of your life, ask yourself this question. When you meet the love of your life, are you still going to be friends with this person? Right? Someone write that in the chat box. When you meet the love of your life, are you still going to be friends with this person? You have to really determine what is a really good friend. What's a really good friend? Because we can have friends that are, women can have male friends, men can have female friends, and they're going to be in their life for a very long time. But if this has just been a fledgling couple dates, is this person going to be in your life for the rest of your life? That's my question I invite you to ask. Okay. Thank you so much for that one. I appreciate it. All right. Let's go swimming. Andrea Starr says, can I date outside of my league if the opportunity comes up and we get along, or is it best to stay equal as far as education or income goes? I don't like questions like this, because when you do that, you're putting someone on a pedestal. And that's by the way, someone's education or income is bullshit. You could have someone that's, by the way, you could have someone highly educated, great income, and they can be a jackass. They can be inconsiderate. They might not be kind. So to me, character is the pedestal. Not even a pedestal. Character is the barometer for choosing a person, and not their education or income. And if you feel less than from education and income, and by the way, in most cases, men, traditionally have always been the higher breadwinners in any dynamic. That's not always the case nowadays, but for the most part, and education as well, because women weren't allowed to get educated and women weren't allowed to work. But don't subscribe to that as being someone out of your league. We oftentimes think of physical attractiveness as well as out of our league. Folks, coming back to my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work. I invite you to lean into your sovereignty, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-confidence. All of this is wrapped up into self-love. By the way, there's a link below to get a copy of the books I recommend. In fact, I recommend this book. I don't necessarily love all the content in this book, but I like some of the aspects. Why Men Love Bitches. Bitches stands for babe, in total control of herself. ES. I invite you to stand into your bitch energy, because you will never put someone else on a pedestal when you have put your heart, your well-being, just like putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. Self-love is putting that mask on yourself first, saying, no one's better than me. I have to take care of myself. And I'm happy to put someone equal to me without that judgment based on income or education. That's my 2 cents on that one. So thank you so much. Margarita Venture writes, question: how do we know when a man is married if we live in a different state? Very, 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 very difficult. Folks, this is what happens when you do long distance dating. I would do a background check on that person. I would check out their LinkedIn account. I would check out their social media footprint. And if they don't have one, you risk, unless you do a background check, and you might even have to hire someone to do that, because you don't know. Listen, did you guys, by the way, has anyone ever watched The Tinder Swindler? You don't know someone until you've invested at least 100 hours of face-to-face time. And so could they be married? By the way, did anyone see the movie Up in the Air? Up in the Air, George Clooney. Can't remember the actress in that, but he meets a woman during his business travels, and he starts to gain some really strong feelings for her. And when he decides to declare his love to her, he drives to her home, only to find out she's married. He was floored. Folks, you got to go to his home. Not a hotel, his home. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that, Marguerite. Thank you so much. Leaf says, amen. Thanks so much. Hey, Leaf says, please hit that like button. Folks, please hit that like button. Please share this video with your friends. I would be truly grateful. Please post a comment below if you've gotten this far by watching the replay. This will be our last question for the day. Question: if a man does this after many years and you work in his business, after many months after our breakup, he acts like nothing has changed between us. I don't really understand your question, so I'm sorry that one, PP. I don't get that one. Happy Ann says, thanks for your advice. Okay, this will be our last one for the day. Question: I dated a guy I really feel strong connection, and he did feel it too. Now after 3 days, we've already answered that question, so thank you so much. Karen says, you're totally correct. Great advice. I agree. Amen again. Totally agree with Jonathan. Looks like I've hit that nerve, and that helped right there. And Mimi said, I did not sleep with them. Okay, good to hear. Folks, I think this will be a great place to wrap up for today. If you found value in my channel, please hit that like button. Please share this video with your friends. If you're brand new, please subscribe. Okay? And then check out all the links below. see if working with a coach is right for you. Schedule a discovery call with me. You can join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. You can follow me on Instagram. I've got products for sale now. And you can actually join my membership within YouTube as well. There's a little join button that you can hit as well. All right. This would be a great place to wrap up this video. And as I always do, I'm going to first off give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow, and give it or them a hug of love. There's a teddy bear, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. I want to thank Bonnie and Linda and Rebecca and Cassandra and Leaf and Cece and Pee and Jennifer and Priya and Wanda and Thatch, Miss Dresser and Andrea and Hillary, Rebecca, Johika, Stacy, Cassandra. Thank you all so much. Have a fabulous weekend. Be well. Take care.